That means that for every $1 trillion created out of nothing for the federal government, by the time it gets into the private sector, into commercial banking, up to an additional $9 trillion can be created out of nothing and pushed into the economy in the form of private loans. And this is where the real action is in the American economy. It's not in what they loan to the federal government, but it's in what that triggers and it makes possible to loan to private investors and corporate investors and institutions. So, you can see now how money comes into existence. It's not a bad deal. I often thought to myself, why didn't I think of that? So, notice though there's a difference here. When the money is created out of nothing for the federal government, they use that money for their own expenditures. When the money is created out of nothing for the banking side of this partnership, the banks don't use it for their purposes. They lend it to people like us. And we pay interest on it. So why do they do this? Duh. Interest on nothing. Think about that. The banks are always saying, well, we've got these reserves, and they say, we only charge 3% on our reserves, but they don't tell you about the other 9 times that. Whatever interest rates the banks tell you they're collecting on their reserves, mentally multiply it by 8 or 9, and now you're looking at the true rate of return on what they actually got, because they charge interest on the things that they don't have as well, and you can't tell the difference between the two. So what's the net effect of all of this? You know, you might say, jokingly, as I do, I said, why didn't I think of that? I think I should have been a banker. I should get my kids to go into banking and all of that sort of thing. But, you know, there's a consequence to this. When this money is created out of nothing, the money supply expands. Now, we don't have time to go to the other side of it. The money supply does contract, too. I'll be talking about that in my seminar, by the way. But there is a contraction side to this equation, which is important to keep in mind. But the net effect, after the contraction is subtracted out of the expansion, you always historically have more expansion than contraction. So you have this expanding money supply. It's always been that way throughout history. Can you imagine why it shouldn't be? Here are people with the ability to create money out of nothing. You know what they're going to do? They're going to create money out of nothing. That's very profitable. And so that's what happens. The money supply expands and expands and expands, and that means that the purchasing power of each of those units goes down. So this phenomenon we call inflation, where it looks like prices are going up, not so. What's really happening is that the value of the dollar is going down. And if you have something of tangible value that it took human effort to produce, I don't care whether it is bottles of water or glass or gold or silver or rubber tires or a package of dried milk or whatever it is that takes human effort to produce, and you were able to track the value of that, its purchasing power would remain fairly constant over long periods of time if you used it as barter, because it's based on human effort. But in terms of dollars, the price seems to be going up and up and up because the value of the dollars goes down and down and down. Today, we're in a situation where if we had lived in 1913 and we had 3 cents in 1913, what we could have bought with 3 cents now costs $1. That's how much inflation, or I should say destruction, of the purchasing power of the American dollar we've seen since 1913. So that's the net effect of this. And this is how the politicians intend to pay off the national debt. Not by taking it from you in direct taxes, not through your income taxes, but through your loss of purchasing power. The time will come in the lifetime of most people in this room when the American dollar will be practically worthless. They'll either convert it into some kind of a new monetary unit, a new dollar. A devalued dollar, they'll give you 1 for every 3 or 5 of the old, or they'll convert it to a new system like an Amaro, which is a new currency they've been talking about, to be shared by Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Or it will be converted into a true international currency, which they're talking about right now at the G20 level, which who knows what it'll be called. That's for the sake of discussion, call it the you-know. But in any event, something will happen because the value of the American dollar will just go down, down, and down and become worthless. And as I say, one of the things we'll be talking about at the seminar is you better be aware of that, because if you don't get your assets out of dollars, if you have money in dollars, dollar-denominated investments like savings accounts or insurance policies or retirement funds or cash in the mattress or whatever it is, you're just like standing on the railroad tracks and the train is coming right for you. And you better get off those tracks or you're going to lose everything. Okay. That's the Mandrake mechanism. So what did we get? Let me wrap up part number one here. We got a corporation, Federal Reserve System, chartered by Congress, given the exclusive franchise to create the nation's money supply. Wow, what a brilliant stroke of genius that was. We got a cartel that is a partner with the federal government to enforce the cartel agreement and to create the illusion of being a public agency. We got a mechanism whereby Congress can raise unlimited taxes through inflation without the public even knowing that they're paying the tax. They think that inflation has got something entirely unrelated to their government. And we got a law that allows the banks to collect interest on nothing. And of late, we can see we got a golden parachute, which enables the fraudulent banks to pass on the inevitable losses of their operation to the taxpayers in the name of rescuing the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, these rescue packages that they talk about that are being rushed through Congress almost every day now, these so-called stimulus packages, are none of the above. They're nothing less than legalized plunder of the American taxpayers. Well, I'm droning on here. We finally get to part two, which won't be too long. It won't be as long as part one. But to just repeat that soundbite, today Americans are making another wish to the government genie, this time to create unlimited quantities of money to protect them from hardship. But what they are getting is unlimited quantities of money being used to deprive them of their freedom. The first question that comes to many people's minds is, why do the American people tolerate this? How do we tolerate this? And the unpleasant fact is that many Americans think it's just wonderful. They're not tolerating it at all. The folks like you in this room are very savvy. You know what's going on. But the American people have been put through a public education system that does not teach basic economic principles. They do not know what's really going on. They're easy marks for these con artists. They think that government money is free. They really do. I saw a Donahue program some months ago when the debate just started. I think it was about government health care, you know? And the issue was, what should the government do? How far should the government go? How much should it pay? Who should get what? And all of these discussions. And some lady raised her hand, and Donahue went over and gave her the microphone, and she says, I don't understand why the government just doesn't pay for it all. They've got the money. Why don't they just pay for it and get off of our backs? And I swear, everybody in that auditorium cheered and applauded loudly at the statement. I mean, these people are dumber than dirt.